All kids out of the pool for Adult Swim. All kids out.
Two, three, four, five, six. This way. Marlin.
Adult Swim. All kids out of the pool.
All right, and welcome back to our nostalgia reaction series. We've been just chilling, watching some different shows, from just throwback shows from like Adult Swim, Cartoon Network, Comedy Central, just different places in general. They were all shows that I remember coming up on. They're all in the strange or weird category for sure. But they're like, the fever dream shows you'd wake up at like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. watching and whatnot. And so last time we dove into some Mad TV and some Cartoon Network, which was just like some Billy and Mandy and a few other shows. So this time we're going to dive into some Adult Swim. Got a few videos to react to here. Giving a quick little dive into the history of the channel and such. And then as we stream, we'll be watching a couple of the shows as well to react to. So just able to get some of that deeper information on the shows now. So the first one we're going to be taking a look at today is going to be Adult Swim: The History of a Television Empire by Captain Christian, I believe. So let's take a look see here.
It's incredibly rare when a television network can hone in on the sensibilities of an entire generation and immediately click with its audience.
I mean, yeah, like that whole setup at the beginning here is exactly how a Adult Swim, like, what do you even call, like, infomercial, like cutaway would start, or to even be like, they sometimes have like commercials, yeah, but then like in between that they'd have like just the stark black concept grounds with the subtitles on the screen, and it's like them talking to you, and it'd either be some of the most random stuff or them just like saying hi or just updating and whatnot, but it was always like something that grabbed your attention, even though it was like the simplest thing. What we got? Next, Children's Hospital, remember. Like, it'd be arguing with itself sometimes.
It's
It was
incredibly
weird.
rare when a television network can hone in on the sensibilities of an entire generation and immediately click with its audience. For my parents' generation, that was MTV. But for my generation, it was and continues to be Adult Swim. Adult Swim may have evolved into the animation empire we know it as now, but it didn't start out that way. Now let me take you back to 1992. Ted Turner had just launched the Cartoon Network, a channel with absolutely no original programming that was built on the back of the MGM cartoon libraries Turner had acquired. So it was essentially the Hanna-Barbera rerun channel. But Turner wanted to make the foray into original programming, and that first original program was Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
So this I actually do know a little bit about, with the whole Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Essentially, when he got control of Adult Swim and the Cartoon Network series name brand, that's exactly what he said. Like, they had all the Hanna-Barbera cartoons all like in a stockpile, just like in the vault, just sitting away. And so they were just running like old, well, not even old, but just like, cartoons that were already made or whatever. So Space Ghost, he had the idea of taking those pre-used animation cells and cutting those into like live interviews with like celebrities and such and stuff like that. So like all the like Space Ghost coast to coast interviews that you see are essentially mostly, if not all, reused animation cells from the actual Space Ghost show. And then I think they just dub over it and everything. And they might even use some of the voice clips for him as well, because I'm pretty sure they still have some of the his voice clips as well, outside of obviously when he like names anybody. But I'm sure they'll probably go into.
It was the brainchild of Mike Lazo, Cartoon Network's original head programmer that would later go on to head up Adult Swim. Lazo was a huge fan of the short-lived Space Ghost cartoon from 1966. And since he had access to those cartoons through the Hanna-Barbera libraries, he had the idea to recontextualize those original animation cells and splice them in with interviews of actors and musicians, giving the washed-up superhero his own talk show.
Hello, I am Space Ghost. Welcome to my show.
So why the need for repurposing animation from the 60s? Well, for the first 4 years of the show, there was basically no money allocated to the production budget. Space Ghost was an all-volunteer gig since the network was hemorrhaging money at that point. There was no safety net, it was a trial-by-fire effort. But the lack of funding and the indie garage feel gave Space Ghost a unique aesthetic that was different than anything else on late night at the time.
Okay, so explain this now. Your human dad put his human penis in your shark mother's vagina, and you sat by and let this happen. Pathetic.
It was experimental and bizarre, a sort of anti-comedy that helped popularize cringe humor, a genre we see today in things like Nathan For You and Adult Swim.
Nathan For You is still to this day some of the most confusing media I haven't taken, because it is cringe humor, but like unlike most shows like Eric Andre, like you'll see him out in public and like you can tell, like, I mean, it's a character essentially, whatever. Especially once you see like Hannibal Buress out there, he's definitely a normal person in most cases. But Nathan, I swear I cannot tell if he is like just living the character, because even in like, what was it, he had another show, because he has Nathan For You, there was another one he did, Nathan on Your Side or something like that. But he's done a couple of these different things where he like helps businesses and whatnot, and those, oh my god, probably gonna go away to look at. We'll look up those Nathan For Yous another time. But the comedy is just so straight deadpan, and like he commits to it so strongly that it's so hard to tell if he's joking or not. After like all these years still.
His own Eric Andre show. Andre even stating that Space Ghost was his main influence when coming up with the concept. In December of 2000, after the success of Space Ghost, several new shows had stealth releases under the guise of a special programming tag to test the waters of the viewing public. Those shows were C-Lab 2021, Harvey Birdman Attorney at Law, The Brack Show, and Aqua Teen Hunger Force, all of which were direct spin-offs of Space Ghost.
Master is my name, and thirst is what I tame. Aqua Teen Hunger Force, assemble!
Frylock, the hunger hater, tater. Meat Rod, ball of compressed meat.
So they're straight from Space Ghost. I never knew that.
Lazo and his team pioneered. And less than a year later, on September 2nd, 2001, those 5 shows, along with home movies, formed the initial lineup for Cartoon Network's official late-night animation block, Adult Swim. Branded as alternative programming for when Cartoon Network's primary demographic would normally be asleep. But we weren't asleep. We were up every night watching intently as this oddball block of experimental animation deconstructed and redefined the format. It changed the conceptions of what television could be.
Family Guy, King of the Hill.
Over the years,
those are on the list. Rick and Morty
isn't
on the list.
Its own voice, speaking directly to the audience. Watching Adult Swim wasn't about viewing each individual program. It was about experiencing the entire night's content. The shows, the bumps, sketches, music, promos, and of course the signature fourth wall breaking intertitle cards.
There it is.
Adult Swim was for fans, and it was the first network that felt truly interactive. They'd respond to emails, open a dialogue with the audience. You could submit artwork or music and have it seen by the programmers, and maybe even get featured. People grew whole careers out of being featured on Adult Swim.
I was living at my mom's house, and the only TV I would watch is Adult Swim. I would get high real quick, watch all them cartoons, and they had a little blip on saying, yeah, you think you got some beats, huh? Send them over. And then they put the address on there, and the first thing they played, they made a promo for the Boondocks around one of my tracks. It just, yeah, it blew me away, man. The only TV you watch, you know, you hear the music on.
Hey.
Adult Swim had a hand in launching the careers of dozens of artists, even boosting the popularity of the Odd Future Collective with their show
Loiter Squad.
Sucking my daddy when I was 7 years old.
We can get away with dick, can't we? We can't say dick? I thought we were Adult Swim. Who's in charge of these rules? How about penis? Can we say penis?
MF Doom, Danger Mouse, Killer Mike.
I'm Killer Mike. You've been watching Adult Swim.
All these artists used Adult Swim as a conduit to grow their audience. It broke ground in offering creators different formats for their art, even taking shows like Children's Hospital, which had started as a web series, and importing it into their nightly lineup. They were the first network to really embrace the digital world.
We're always, especially at Adult Swim, we're trying to stay ahead of the curve and bring people something they can't see anywhere else, and that includes online. So we've hired writers off of Twitter
God,
accounts.
Doc
We're
and
taking
Marty.
pictures, we're looking online, you know, we're looking on Instagram, we're looking on Facebook, we're looking on Vine. You know, for me, it's just inhaling as much content as possible and trying to figure out what works for us.
Adult Swim also became the go-to network for canceled or soon-to-be-canceled programming. It had a direct role in the revival of one of Fox's most popular cartoons, Family Guy.
Hi there, I'm Peter Griffin. Next Sunday, Adult Swim is airing.
Family Guy was so good at the start.
Refused to show, but my good pals at Cartoon Network are showing it. Oh, I think they're making a couple of changes because I'm so controversial.
After Family Guy's cancellation in 2003, it premiered in reruns on Adult Swim and exploded in the ratings, boosting viewership to over 200%. And less than a year later, it was renewed by Fox for another season. The show even added this bumper to one of its later episodes, taking a jab at Fox for its unjust termination. And in 2007, an almost identical renewal deal happened with Futurama, after an increase in viewership.
Futurama just came back again.
But probably Adult Swim's biggest contribution to television was its introduction to mature anime to an American audience.
Yes,
it started with
Toonami
in 2001.
The start.
Adult-oriented anime became the backbone of the network, sort of an extension of Toonami, which ironically later became incorporated into Adult Swim after its own revival campaign.
Thank you to Cartoon Network, thank you to William Street, and everybody at Adult Swim for actually paying attention to the voice of the people. You have spoken loudly and you have spoken clearly. Hashtag bring back Toonami.
But Adult Swim wasn't just about giving content a second chance. It was about giving it that first chance. It's a hub where creators can create, where the art is experimental and transgressive and surreal and sloppy. It's a place that welcomes risk-taking, that wouldn't immediately dismiss a show where the main character is literally a pair of ass cheeks.
That's in the key.
Adult Swim canceled your favorite
Jesus
show?
Christ.
Good. The important part is it gave you a favorite show, most of which weren't even designed for longevity. They're supposed to be fleeting. That's what makes them special. It's about spontaneity. It's about the community. It's about the experience. And that's one thing you can't get from Netflix.
No, for real. Hey, Captain Christian. Definitely gonna like this way. That was fire. Yeah, like I said, like I'm glad to see that. I mean, obviously, I know a lot of people who enjoy the Adult Swim experience in general. Just that waking up at 3 a.m., getting that, seeing the Adult Swim title cards, and like just seeing there being just completely bewildered at what the hell they're even talking about. Then them showing some complete crazy randomness, like Tim and Eric, awesome show.
And welcome to discount prices. I've got $1.99. I've got $7.99. I've got $16.99. Cheap prices. $14. $11. $2.49. $3.
Or something, or Eric Andre show going off.
Grizzly bear. All right. Oh my God. So welcome to the show. This is still safe, right? I no longer am a fan of this bit.
Squidbillies.
Honey, you keeping in that damn robot box. Give it to me now. Do it. Here you go. Go home, take it. Now, can I please have one of them Walkmans? That'll be $34 if you got it. That's ought to cover it.
It's all that, like I said, we're definitely gonna be taking the trip down memory lane here and be watching some of those shows on stream. So definitely come check us out. But for now, we're gonna be hopping in to another quick little deep dive on the Adult Swim. This is just a deep dive into Adult Swim by Big Tug as we're watching these clips.
There are truly only a few constants in the human experience. We all die, we all poop, and we all got scared shitless as a child because we left the TV on Cartoon Network a little bit too long, and at 10 p.m. that weird guy from Robot Chicken got on the screen and it was terrifying. Why was he so scary? Adult Swim. Love it or hate it, it has had a massive impact on American culture for the past 21 years. That's right, 21 years. This sin fest of adult animation has been rocking its way on a children's entertainment network for as long as a human being has to live to drink. But when Adult Swim debuted, adult animation wasn't like a new idea. In 1972, the X-rated film Fritz the Cats made like $90 million worldwide. You had The Simpsons, which first aired in 1989, and I think it's still going. I haven't checked in a little bit. And in 2005, South Park won the Peabody Award, which is insane, but it's proof that, this wasn't new. But what sets apart Adult Swim from other channels? Well, I guess not channel. It's a programming block. But what sets it apart isn't its notable longevity or its, tendency to shock audiences. It was its ability to create its own space to showcase alternative voices and ideas under one roof. Its ability to bring outsider art to the mainstream. And its ability to, for some reason, not worry about making any money while doing the first two things. Welcome to Adult Swim, one of the most important cultural touchstones of American modern television. So before we dive into Adult Swim, and yeah, there's gonna be a lot of swimming puns in this one, we need to take a little trip into an insane world known as the 1990s. Some of you kiddos have only been alive for years that start with a 2 and a 0, so let me tell you about the 90s as an expert on the decade. Quarter-operated phone booths littered street corners, which is crazy because not only were you making literal phone calls in public in boxes, but you also had to have quarters on you all the time, which is weird to me. Pizza Hut was a sit-down restaurant, and they also had these really cool lamps that I cannot find for the life.
Pizza Hut was a sit-down restaurant. They had a salad bar and everything. OG Pizza Hut could not compare to current day Pizza Hut. I don't know where it went wrong, what happened, because people still go to sit-down restaurants. Like that's still a thing. Even pizza sit-down restaurants people still go to. So I don't know who pushed the shift on Pizza Hut to stop doing the sit down in-style restaurants and whatnot, because there's one by where my parents live and it's just in like degrade. It's degraded. It's so bad. Like from the outside it just looks like some restaurant you'd see like on the side of some desert highway. Like, oh, the only place for 300 miles. It's like that's how abandoned. You walk in and like just to pick up your pizza and you see the dining room is just like completely abandoned. Not even the freaking workers sitting there to eat. It's insane. But oh my god, OG Pizza Hut back in the 90s was a whole different world.
Life of me, I want one so goddamn bad. Games like Doom and Quake were giving sexless men with no aspiration in life something to do while they whittled away. And cable TV had grown from a novelty to a necessity. Originally, cable TV was something for rich people to have to flex on the poors who were still using rabbit ears to get channels. But then in the 90s, cable TV became a giant industry generating over $1 billion in ad revenue every year. And this bizarre backdrop of prosperity and ugly culture was the perfect pressure cooker for the insanity of Adult Swim. I had to read that one off the phone because it was really hard
hard full sentence to say and memorize. In the early 90s, cartoons were a far cry from what we know them as today. Instead of, original shows that people know and love, it was really just mainly Hanna-Barbera reruns for the most part. Hanna-Barbera, the studio that was founded by the Tom and Jerry creators in the early 50s, and then they made a bunch of terribly animated shows like the Jetsons, Yogi Bear, Flintstones, like all those things. Fun fact, almost every Hanna-Barbera character has a collar or something around their neck in their character design because it made it easier to animate their faces by just swapping out their heads completely. That has nothing to do with the video, but now you'll never be able to unsee it. But the rise of syndicated cable made it so Sunday cartoons...
Hey, do not hate on the shortcuts that were taken to try to get these animated shows out cheaply and efficiently while still looking decent. Okay? Cell shaded animation frame by frame. You try that shit, okay? That shit is not easy. So yes, whatever shortcuts they could take at the time, come on.
Becoming less and less popular over time. The kids are drinking Surge soda and eating Future ice cream. They don't got time for no goddamn wacky races. This allowed the back catalog of Hanna-Barbera cartoons to drop in price so TBS could sweep them up, and then that eventually led to the creation of Cartoon Network in 1992. And it did pretty well. I mean, there was not a lot of places on cable TV for kids to go and watch shit, so it was filling a vacuum. However, it had one large problem that other channels did not have to deal with, and this problem is, of course, the fact that, let me see here, children are dorks who go to bed early. Pretty consistent problem across the board for TV people. So advertisers don't want to buy ad space at like 10 p.m. on Cartoon Network because literally nobody is watching that. And when you consider what other people were doing for late night TV in the 90s, you can see the advertiser's point. TV after 10 o'clock was hyper focused on adults. Still kind of is, honestly. Major networks aired like talk shows and infomercials, and cable networks would play like risque movies or ads for phone sex, which was a big thing in the 90s, phone sex, which is crazy to me. I don't think I would ever see the appeal of that. I'm just happy how far we've come in the porn industry. This is actually a fun fact. The USA Network was wiling out with a program called USA Up All Night. It was hosted by Gilbert Gottfried, and it would just play heavily edited B-list porn exploitation movies all the time. Like one of them was Nymphoid Barbarian in Dinosaur Hell. I'd watch that. I'd watch that right now. Even children's cable programming pioneer Nickelodeon would change their whole thing and do Nick and...
So essentially it's like the what are those oh my god. So essentially it's like what is that? Fucking Crackle and all that. Those like CD tier movie apps that are like free, and they just have like the most random movies you've never heard of.
Night, which would be like, sitcoms from times earlier, so they would get the adult appeal without being, degenerates. Something that you will learn Adult Swim did not take. But I've been neglecting to mention one important tidbit that even the Cartoon Network executives weren't counting on. A third of Cartoon Network's watchers were adults. Weird adults, but adults nonetheless. So you got a time slot where people aren't watching, you got some weird adults that might be floating around. What do? Well, you make a cartoon show for weird adults. In 1994, Cartoon Network made a show called Space Ghost Coast to Coast. And if you don't know what this is, get excited. There was an old Hanna-Barbera cartoon called Space Ghost that literally everyone forgot about, and what they did was they take clips from that show and they would cut them up and edit them and voice them over to make a completely new show, because literally Cartoon Network did not have any money for original programming, so they had to cut corners every chance they got. The original show was about a space superhero that fought dinosaurs, which is the most 60s fever dream coke bender idea I've ever heard. So then they took that character and put it in a talk show setting, which just by the premise alone is hilarious, I think. And since Cartoon Network did not have an original content budget, they had to funnel advertising budget into the show itself. Like, they couldn't advertise Cartoon Network on other channels, they just had to put that money into Space Ghost Coast to Coast. And personally, I think it was worth it, and historically it turned out to be, but a lot of people were against the show originally. It was way before its time, with extremely well-written jokes and absurdist humor, and it also got a bunch of real-life celebrities to go on the show in a weird meta talk show kind of thing. I mean, to get the vibe of the show, all you have to do is see the time Conan O'Brien went on, and instead of Space Ghost interviewing him, Space Ghost just investigated an ant for 10 minutes straight while Conan just dealt with no one talking to him.
I think this show is very bad.
Okay.
And should be stopped.
Oh, okay.
I think you're a bad person, and don't take this the wrong way.
All right.
Just next level stuff. Just really next level shit. The show quickly gained a cult following, and it was showing some promise. So the executives were like, okay, what else can we do? This is kind of working. And they were like, I don't know, let's try anime? Anime might work. In the
And it
90s,
did.
a lot of people, no one cared about anime in the 90s, really, at
No
all.
one
Some
knew.
people did, but they were this. So the mainstream appeal of anime was not there at all. So licensing was cheap. So they were like, screw it, throw it up there. And suddenly this became a staple of the channel too during the nighttime segment, which led to the 1997 block Toonami, which you should know about. It's iconic. And it showed a lot of kids who had never had experience watching anime before, things like Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon and Gundam Wing, all these shows that everyone loves now. So the executives all get together and talk to Mike Lazo, the creator of Space Ghost Coast to Coast, and they say, hey, listen, we're starting to fuck with the vision a little bit, okay? We think we can turn this garbage time slot into something hot and bothered with the right direction. And Mike was like, let me hop in the kitchen. Let me see what I can cook up real quick. Of course, the ad sales team at Cartoon Network was resistant to it because they were like, you know, this is a cartoon children's network and you're selling really adult shows.
Right.
How are we supposed to pitch this?
And it worked
And they had a
well.
good point, but Lazo, I don't know which one it is, but he had a year to pull this off. So, you know, who's to say he's even gonna get it done? Who knows if he can pull this off? A small group of people, headed by Lazo, started working around the clock for a thing that would eventually become Adult Swim. None of them, mind you, with a history of animation in their background. None of them have that. What they did have was a shared vision of weird shit and the ability to work really hard for long hours. A lot of them had full-time jobs at a Cartoon Network, and they also had another full-time job, which was creating Adult Swim. And there was no, like, offices for the Adult Swim team, so they had to do whatever they could, wherever they could. They were editing footage in broom closets and using old
Stanley
PCs that
Parable
no one else
broom
was
closet.
using because that's all they had at the time. And also, even though Cartoon Network gave Adult Swim the green light, no one at the company was really happy about it. Shows like Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, and C-Lab 2021, which were also two Hanna-Barbera shows that, like, you know, no one was thinking about anymore, so they gave it the old Space Ghost treatment and just kind of changed things about it and remixed it. Well, these remixes actually ended up upsetting the original creators of the show because they didn't say you could do that, and the original shows were like fun kids cartoons, and these were not
At all.
word to my mother. Your mother. Alex Toth, the original creator of Birdman and C-Labs, was like, yo, stop. Please stop. I'm trying to understand. How can you watch this clip from C-Lab and tell me it's not worth it?
Dude, check me out. I'm like a little otter. A sexy little otter. Damn.
I quote this daily. No one
A
knows what I'm
sexy
talking
little
about, but
otter.
I am a sexy little otter. And it's not just the creators. People inside the company were confused as hell as to what is going on. Executives still fully didn't understand what the appeal or even the base humor of these shows actually were. The ad teams still didn't know how to pitch these shows to advertisers because I personally wouldn't know how to do that. And once again, people were editing footage in closets. So, you know, the work-to-life balance was not great. But despite the crazy working conditions and initial confusion, the trials and tribulations were over, and Adult Swim finally debuted on September 2nd, 2001. Well, there's more trials and tribulations coming up, but they were out of Adult Swim's control. They couldn't really do anything about it.
Success.
So the red carpet wasn't exactly laid out for Adult Swim's premiere, which makes sense because it aired at midnight, and people don't really care about new programming blocks. Like, looking back on it, yeah, it's Adult Swim, it's a big deal, but like, CBS is like, we're running new, who gives a fuck? No one's tuning in for that. But it was a weird start, like it was a slow roll. Like it wasn't a, hey, here's Adult Swim completely finished, enjoy it, we're done making it. It was a slow rollout. It was testing the waters of the late night audiences. On the first night at midnight, they just played the first episode of Home Movies, which is a fantastic show, but then it kind of tapered off after that. And then a few months down the line, they also soft launched a couple other shows like Aqua Teen Hunger Force and other popular Adult Swim cartoons. And they did this by airing it unannounced at 4 a.m. in December of 2001. So I don't know if they don't want people to see these things, but whatever. And then finally, after a 5-month delay, Adult Swim officially premiered on a Labor Day weekend, which is crazy because people are doing shit on Labor Day weekend. No one is whatever. Despite everything I just said, Adult Swim somehow managed to grow exponentially throughout its first year. And this is in spite of the fact that all the advertising promoting Adult Swim was not showing people why they should watch it. It was to prove to people that children shouldn't. Which is a wild way to handle this. But the explicit anti-advertising campaign actually really worked, and it kind of set the precedent for what the channel was going to be for the rest of its life. It nailed the coveted 18 to 34 age bracket, and that's my people, baby. That's what I work for. Advertisers still had no goddamn clue what was going on with these oddball shows, but all they knew was they wanted a piece of it, baby, because people are watching it. And Adult Swim soon expanded to multiple nights with more original programming and more anime. They're always going to put more anime in this puppy. And it also became a haven for animated shows that were canceled by their original network. Futurama Futurama and Family Guy both were canceled by Fox, and then they found a new life on Adult Swim, which, gave it enough reputation and viewership to start those shows back over again. And if you take nothing out of this video, please understand that the only reason why Futurama continued to go was because of Adult Swim. So that's all you got to know about this channel and why it's so great. And the popularity of these X-Network shows brought a lot of people to the channel, and they were programmed earlier into the Adult Swim block, so like it was a buffer between children's cartoons and the weird shit that you're going to see later on. But actually,
there's about to be some wild shit. I know. Oh, I can't wait till we get to the Whites, because so far it's been experimental. Like Squidbillies, I want to say, is probably the wildest thing we've seen so far. Aqua Teen can get pretty crazy, but outside of those,
is the original programming that had all the crazy stuff in it. That became the main appeal of the channel, which nobody expected. We got Aqua Teen Hunger Force, which came from when the creator heard a story about how a fast food restaurant was putting together pieces of old burgers to sell to people like they were new. That's how this show started. The show has an anthropomorphic milkshake, a box of fries, and a wad of meat, known as Meat Wad. They live in a suburban neighborhood, they fight aliens, and they live next to a perverted piece of shit named Carl. That's the premise of the show. It was a hit almost in spite of itself. It tried so hard to make people not like it. It was thought to be such an unwatchable show that network executives said that maybe let's make them detectives. Make them detectives. People will like that more. It makes a little bit more sense. And I guess, the show really had no plot to begin with, so if you give it a little something to go on, I guess it could make people watch it, but they were detectives for 3 episodes, and then they dropped that premise immediately and never went back to it. Where else are you going to find this kind of stuff besides Adult Swim? And network begged for them to change the voice of Meatwad because no one can understand him when he talks. Literally, viewers were writing in saying, am I going crazy? I can't understand what this guy is saying. And they refused. The writers refused to do that.
Yes.
Creators also insisted that the voice of Master Shake, Dana Snyder, should get absolutely hammered for his audition tape to get the role. And he did. And he got the role.
I am a modern-day Tom Sawyer.
All of this combined made Aqua Teen Hunger Force the
This is the
flagship
early day
show
Rick
of
and
the
Morty.
channel for years
Just
to
without
come.
the
We have
science.
Adventure Bros, which is a really important show if you look into it a little bit. It was a parody of the 60s style superhero family shows like Johnny Quest, but after 7 seasons, it morphed into an entirely different thing altogether. Adventure Bros was one of the first cartoon shows that adopted the golden age of television rules in terms of writing and plot, while other cartoon shows had short stories and very little continuity in terms of like The Simpsons always wear the same shirt and everything goes back to normal at the end of the episode. Adventure Bros created a cast of pop culture obsessed superheroes that fought generational trauma that built upon itself. But the show would constantly take the audience expectations and turn them on their head, because one episode they would maybe cover the topic of toxic masculinity and how much that can harm somebody, and then the next episode they'll bring in Brick Frog, who's a guy who dresses up like a frog and throws bricks at people.
Brick Frog!
Thank you.
Part of the success of Venture Bros was the fact that it was only written by 2 people. There was no writer's room for this show. And that significantly slowed down the production of the show because it took 14 years to make 7 seasons, which is a bad turnaround rate, but it created a mind meld of consistent, thoroughly thought out script writing that the creators called Unibrain. Instead of a writer's room where, comedy writers are fighting over who gets their joke in there and it's not really about who, the characters or the plot, Venture Bros became an honest expression of a very particular type of nerdy obsessive. The exact type of person who is up at 3 a.m. and watching cartoons, so it worked out perfectly. But as much as Adult Swim nailed it with their adult cartoons, things got weirder over time. They switched the script a little bit by including live action programming to their adult cartoon block. The surreal satire of Tim and Eric's awesome show Great Job and the Eric Andre show brought a whole new brand of anti-comedy and cringe humor to people who have never seen that shit before. The editing style and surreal sense of humor of these shows created a home for offbeat performers to experiment and turn indie comics into influential voices in mainstream comedy. Without Adult Swim, someone like Eric Andre would still be pretending to be a caveman at Geico live events. And speaking of oddball people that no one else is going to give a shot to, Adult Swim also did live action things that they like to call infomercials. They were not infomercials. These shows usually aired at 4 a.m. with no warning, no title card. They would just pretend to be commercials, or they wouldn't even pretend to be commercials.
They'd just be something.
This is something I'm really passionate about. I love these things. Sometimes Adult Swim humor
this is also
was the fact
something
that
we'll be
there
watching
was
on
no
stream.
humor. It was more about all the parts being not funny that made the whole bit hilarious. If you stumbled upon one of these infomercials at 4 a.m. and you had a little dribble of mental illness in your brain, you would wake up with grippy socks in a hospital the next morning. We have unedited footage of a bear, which starts out like, an unedited footage of a bear, and then it breaks into an infomercial about anti-allergy medication and becomes a horrifying example of doppelgangers and I guess the big pharmaceutical industry. We have Too Many Cooks, which starts like a 90s comedy sitcom, and then it devolves horribly. It's terrifying. And then we have There Are People in This House, which is my favorite thing I've ever seen in my entire life. If you have the time, jump into the ARG if There Are People in This House. It seems like it doesn't make sense. It makes a lot of sense, and it's horrifying. Wham City Comedy made most of these, and Adult Swim is just doing stuff like this.
We'll be checking that out.
And it's
What?
still working. Like, imagine TBS doing something like this. Imagine MSNBC throwing on a horrifying bear video. They'd get shut down. Adult Swim doesn't care, though, baby. What other channel are you gonna get stuff like this? You won't find it anywhere else. Adult Swim is in a league of its own. Adult Swim didn't reinvent the wheel, but they did create something wholly unique. A mainstream place where animation for adults and subversive comedy could grow. It would be impossible to accurately measure the pop culture influence that Adult Swim has had on the American public, or the world, for that matter. And that's because it's bigger than the sum of its parts. You can draw parallels between Adult Swim's original programming and the biggest adult animated shows right now, like Bob's Burgers or BoJack Horseman. Or you could find parallels between the surrealist comedy of Tim Heidecker and Eric Andre into shows like I Think You Should Leave. That probably had a huge influence. There was countless writers, producers, animators that came out of Adult Swim or came into Adult Swim, which changed the landscape forever. But altogether, Adult Swim was mostly just a vibe. It was just a vibe that took America by storm. The brand exuded a feeling that anything could happen on this channel at any time.
And it
had
did.
Weird but fantastic self-referential bumpers, played insane April Fool's jokes on its viewers, and arguably brought anime into America's mainstream. I want to bring that up once again. I really think Adult Swim was a big part of that. It turned TV into an art form that commented on TV itself, which no one was doing back then. It's a place where a show like Robot Chicken that was rejected by Mad TV, Saturday Night Live, and Comedy Central could end up winning how many Emmys? Two Emmy Awards. And most importantly, to me, Adult Swim is a channel that's willing to take risks on creators who came from the internet. And no one else is able to do that. No other channel is doing that. I was raised on YouTube and Newgrounds, and watching people that I've been watching since I was a wee little tot get full shows on Adult Swim makes me want to cry. It makes me so happy. If you started on the internet, the industry as a whole probably looks down upon you and doesn't think you're a real artist. Then Adult Swim said, let's take a shot on it, and now we have Rick and Morty. We have Smiling Friends. We have Haha You Clowns. We have Crystal Fantasy. Literally all the shit Jack Stauber is doing. Like, it's really important to the culture what Adult Swim is doing. Streaming has completely disrupted the entertainment industry, but Adult Swim is something that could not be put into a simple box. Now entering its third decade on television, Adult Swim is probably the most popular it ever has been, and I think I know why. Despite what everyone thinks in this industry, good art is good art. And even though it's not advertiser friendly, if you build it, they will come. And then when you have the people there, you can sell them a Trump coin at 3 a.m. or whatever the hell they run ads for on that channel. The videos every Saturday, maybe one on Wednesday. There's a lot in this video I wasn't able to touch on. Like, I really wanted to go into the bumpers, but like there's only so much I can say without just reading the bumpers. They're hilarious. You should look them up. Also, the art style, I don't know much about art styles, but the whole vibe of Adult Swim is fantastic. But regardless, maybe I'll talk about it later. Maybe someone else will talk about it for me. Thank you guys so much. Have a good weekend.
Fantastic. Oh my god. So yeah, that definitely gears us up to start getting into some of these Adult Swim shows. We actually have the infomercials all set up and ready to go as well. Adult Swim has always been that nostalgic, like that perfect place of like I said, waking up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and like just vibing to whatever's on the TV. It'd be like some of the most random stuff, whether it was like, you know, you catching Toonami finally finishing off and like catching like some Samurai Jack or some Sailor Moon, or you catching one of the infomercial or bumps going on, running into like Squid Billy's Xavier Renegade Angel with some of like the craziest stuff I've still seen to this day. They have some like very interesting concepts that like definitely influence the way that, you know, I approach like art and just like my sense of humor and everything as well. All right, and outside of that, for now, like I said, we'll be watching some of those infomercials and such on stream here in a little bit. So definitely peek us out if you're coming from the YouTube. So over at all Afromations _. Yeah, we'll catch y'all later.